Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think our biggest issue with many of these amendments are that there's no clear definition of what these items are, and we're waiting for some bureaucrat to define what these things mean. If it's up to the federal government, up to bureaucrats to define things, then we end up with terms like extremists, domestic terrorists, and they end up targeting conservatives. I mean, if we were wanting to have an additional disclaimer from the government, well, the Vice President of the United States just said that energy rates are down, that people's electric bills are lower and they're able to afford vacations. No, energy is very expensive right now and continues to rise because of the policies implemented by my colleagues on the left and enforced through the stroke of a pen by Joe Biden. And so to have a government disclaimer on something, I don't think is very helpful, because it's at whatever political narrative they're trying to promote at that time. And I think it's interesting, the gentlewoman, Ms. Porter, just aligned this with grocery shopping and with the nutritional facts, because there's also issues there. Well, that's a government regulation to have these nutritional facts on the foods that we consume. Well, do you know that if we get beef from Brazil and it's packaged in America, well, you could put a sticker on that that says that its country of origin is America? Well, that's disinformation, because the cow was raised in Brazil and brought to America, but just put in a box or in a different box in America, and now we get to put that sticker on there. And then, of course, I mean, we've all seen the arguments with cage-free. That's a government regulation, to have these things on here. Well, your chicken's cage-free. Well, that just means it's not a battery cage. It's still in an enclosure, and probably a really tight one, too. These aren't just free-range chickens on 40 acres, 50 acres. They're still in enclosures, sugar-free, fat-free. You can go through all of these things, and these are from government regulations. So I think with all of this, you can say that government ruins nearly everything. So why have government receive more power to restrict Americans, to give their own definitions depending on who is in power at that time? And that's the issue that my colleagues over here are having with most of these amendments. It's not the context of the amendments, it's just the how broad they are. And we don't want them later defined. Yes, I'll yield.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. Under this bill, who is going to define, you just have an issue as to who defines misinformation, disinformation. Who's going to define lawful speech?
Well, I think lawful speech is something that's already out there. Free speech is lawful speech. We have free speech here in America.
You don't think that
Chair recognizes Ms. Boebert.
Thank you. When you're throwing these amendments out and you have them very vague and broad, then that's where we have an issue. And we need to have a clear definition before we can consider these things. But lawful speech is already determined. We have freedom of speech, and the federal government interfering in that, colluding with big tech, that is the problem that we have. That's the premise that we're facing, where American citizens have their First Amendment right completely infringed by the federal government colluding with big tech. Thank you. I yield.